not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men, who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late, and they grieved it on their way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now, with your fierce tears I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. I recently saw a video featuring Jason Silva, the host of National Geographic show Brain Games. In it, he makes reference to Sigmund Freud's essay titled On Transience. The crux of the article is that while walking through the country with a friend and poet, Rainer Rilke, he noted that despite the beauty all around them, Rilke had grown suddenly despondent and seemed incapable of enjoying any of it. Rilke explained that the reason for this depression came from his knowledge and realization that all of it would one day pass away. Silva goes on to describe Rilke's sorrow at the impermanent nature of the world and Freud's inability to accept that sorrow for himself. Silva and Freud alike argue that rather than lose hope in the face of death, that we should appreciate what is before us all the more. Toward the end of the video, Silva paraphrases Dylan Thomas when he says, "I will not go gently into that good night, but instead rage, rage against the dying of the light." In a way, I agree with their sentiments, but at the same time, I'm compelled to illustrate the folly of their position. I chose Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night not because it is my favorite poem, but rather because I feel it demands a response. Over the last few years, I have witnessed a trend which I find altogether puzzling: the glorification of atheism. Many well-spoken secularists have undertaken an effort to spiritualize the atheistic worldview. And while I don't much care that they do this, I feel compelled to address the oddity of the situation. The argument seems to go that since life is finite, and this will all someday be gone, we should more deeply appreciate the time we have and try to make ourselves as noteworthy as possible. While I agree that we should appreciate what we have in the time we have it, I disagree with the reasoning behind it. If life is indeed finite, and there is no life after death, then everything we strive for is meaningless. If nothing that we do has any lasting value, what is the point of doing anything? If every act I perform, whether good or bad, will be wiped from all memory and history, why should I perform any act at all? Since there is no distinction between a long and happy life and a short miserable life, why should we strive for anything? Now, don't get me wrong. While I may agree with this nihilistic conclusion, I don't accept the overarching premise from which it comes. I believe that there is life after death. I believe that our choices do matter because they have eternal value. Were it not for my faith, my outlook on life would be too terrible to accept, because I would see nihilism as the only possible conclusion. My hope in writing this poem is not to depress people who don't share the same worldview as me, but rather to share my worldview by discussing theirs. I believe that the best ideas will always win out over any others if given a fair chance. If we can discuss what we believe, why we believe it, and where we will end up as a result, then we are all more free to choose what and why we believe. And so, it is with this hope of responding in respect and passion that I wrote my poem on transience and vanity. Go on and rage against the dying of the light, or rage against gravity as you fall. Protest the river as it marches day and night, and beat your fists against an iron wall. Attempt to calm the raging storm, and try to catch the fading smoke. Command the stones be bred in form. Take back those cruel words you spoke. Ignore your crumbling foundation as you try to make your stand. Deny that sinking sensation as you fade into the quicksand. Who are you to command the tide, to scratch and claw for breath? Beneath your boisterous revelries you hide, a dead man walking, afraid of death. You think that by holding on tight, you can make it all worthwhile, as though by putting up a good fight, perhaps death will applaud your guile. I do not gladly suffer fools, not even those whom I call friend. You can't defy entropy's rules if all you are is dust in the wind. The walls around you are closing, and though your fears seem hushed, you cannot get by on just supposing that you will not be crushed. If our lives fail to continue past the sunset of that good night, if there is no hero for you, will raging make the day more bright? Why should we like children rage, or scream against the end of life? What dignity is there in men of old age to tightly cling to joy and strife? It really makes no difference if death the final end should be. The only truth is transience, all else is naught but vanity. For if we choose to take a stand against the breaking of the waves, then we will need to hold the hand of one who does not fear the grave. We cannot be both dirt and soul and think that both will always last, but shed what you cannot control when the time for dirt has passed. We are left without defense if we deny divinity. Let's cast off this transience. Let us forget this vanity.